right. Okay, so it's been a while since we've done these. My name is Jamal McCrea, and these will be titled Sunday Sermons. This one is going to be called Interlude. So some things to talk about. This one is very personal, so I'm like really emotional right now, even thinking about what I'm getting ready to talk about. So I want to go back and like recap to bring you up to today, so that way we can keep moving forward. So that's why this is called Interlude. So it's that part, that transition. I was having a conversation at a birthday dinner, and we were asked like, what part of your life do you feel like you're in? And I said interlude, and they were like, "Oh, you saying that because J. Cole has a song called Interlude? That's your favorite rapper." They didn't say that, but that is. But I was like, "Nah, I really feel like my life is in the interlude stage of transition." But it's like if you're gonna transition, you have to understand where you came from, looking back at your life and where we're headed. So I was listening to Stephen Furtick's sermon, and he was talking about the hardest thing. We get to a place where God can forgive us, and we're okay with that. But then the hard thing that we struggle with is forgiving ourselves. So I have different Jamals that I have to forgive in order to move forward. So my childhood Jamal, we have to start there and look at him. So, and that's the parts we have to break down. The teenager Jamal, I have to forgive him. The 20-year-old Jamal, I have to forgive him, because now as you grow older and you mature, you can look back and lock that part of your life because you felt like, oh, you were stupid, or oh, you didn't think things through, or oh, you were foolish. Or you can put your arms around that version of yourself and love him and say, hey, it's okay. We all make mistakes, right? So let's go back then, and then we'll come back. So we go to childhood Jamal, and childhood Jamal, you look at and you see a kid, single mom, no dad, and because of that, you're angry, right? And so I remember one time I was talking because I work with kids. When I was attending a church, we're helping work with kids, and I remember I was talking, and I always thought my dad not being there story would kind of relate more to young boys, but it was actually like these. We were talking. They had these bonfires that they used to do at the retreat, and so I just remember it was these three girls, young girls. I don't remember how old. It was their first time like coming out with us, and they were like, tell us that part. Go back to that. We want to hear like you were talking about your dad and how you had to forgive him. And I was like, man, I never thought women or young girls would want to have that story about understanding about forgiving your dad. So somebody else tried to step in and talk, and they're like, no, we want to hear him talk. We want to hear him talk. And that's when you kind of start to realize, like, man, God's gifted you with something. So I'm like, all right, look, this is what you got to do. You got to forgive your dad. If your dad wasn't there, you got to forgive him. That's the first thing. So for me, childhood, oh man, like, childhood, childhood Jamal. I guess we can edit that out. Childhood, childhood Jamal, is angry. So he's angry because he doesn't have a relationship with his father, right? So, but the cool thing is today I'm cool with my pops. I tell my pops I love him. He tells me he loves me. So I tell these young girls, I say, you got to forgive your dad. And they're like, well, how did you do that? So it was a stage in my life. Now this is teenager, 20s. I think we're 20s Jamal, right? I'm talking to my mentor, and I'm coming up out of college. I'm getting ready to graduate. And he's like, you got to forgive your dad. You got to forgive your dad. And the reason I'm sharing these stories is because you don't want stories to die. Like before stuff could be written down, there were storytellers. So you had to tell a story to keep a story going. My mentor passed last year, and a lot of things that he taught me, I don't want to see them die off. So I know I have to pass those on to the next group of folks. So he told me, we're sitting in the car. He's like, you got to forgive your dad. You got to forgive your dad. And I'm like, I don't want to hear that. I sat in the car one time. I saw my dad. He was leaving out of my aunt's, and I didn't even go over there at the time when I was really upset. So my aunt was like, come here. She's like, don't you ever let him affect you in a way that you don't come to this house. You're welcome here. So my cousin was like, yo, if you ever meet my cousin, he's hilarious because he looks intimidating, but he's like the nicest guy. Or, he's like, I don't feel weird calling him a big teddy bear, but he's like really a nice guy. So he like, look, I think it's time for you to sit down and talk to your pops. So I'm like, why is everybody saying this? So I'm like, all right, God, if this is what you want me to do, then just show me how you want me to do it. So my aunt used to have these like Christmas pre-dinners or Christmas breakfasts. It was Christmas breakfast. So we sit down and we're at Christmas breakfast, and we as the guys got set at the kids table because it was two separate tables, but it was intended for the kids. But I guess it wasn't no kids there. But anyway, the four of us end up at the kids table. So it's my dad's right here. I'm where I'm sitting. It was probably different, but how we tell the story. But I'm sitting right here. My dad's sitting right here. My cousin and my other cousin. So man, I'm like, this is the moment. This is the time, and it's tough. Oh man, I can feel it. Like God wants me to do this. So I'm like, you know what? I turn. I like, look, Dad. You know, the past is the past. I only want. I don't. I know. Can't take anything for granted. Can't take life for granted. So I just want to move forward. So I just want to say, I forgive you for everything that happened in the past, and I just want to move forward. So in that moment, he turns and looks away and like takes a minute to himself. So I'm like, man, like yo, I just was open and this dude is just gonna turn away from me. But when I was talking to my mentor, it was like he was like, you touched him, and he didn't know how to receive that. So he had to, as a man, we gotta gather ourselves and then come back. So he turned back and he was like, you know, thank you, son. And yeah, I like that. I would like that or something like that. I'm like, all right, cool. So then after that, we was good. I love you. Good to see you. How are you? We talk, hug, good space. And I was like, I had to let that go. Like that was hate in my heart. And that was a hate in my heart that affected my childhood. And so we so my cousin in that moment was like, well, I didn't think we was gonna do it right now, but I'm glad we did it. Let's keep eating our food, breaking bread. So and ever since then we were good. So now I tell that story to those young ladies, going back, and I share that story of you have to forgive your dad. I don't care, and I got to be careful saying I don't care because I know it can be things. I'm not talking about like rape or things like that. But if your dad was absent or your dad was selfish in his decisions and focused on himself, once you become an adult, once I became an adult, once I became a man, I understood, oh, my dad didn't want to take on responsibility. And it's like responsibility is a choice. You can choose to take responsibility or you can choose not to take it. He chose not to. That doesn't mean it's personal. It just means that he doesn't do well with responsibility. Then I understood my father's childhood, and I wasn't as angry because I understood the type of childhood that he had in relationship with his dad. So then it was like, oh, now because I'm able to be in this place of forgiveness, I can be objective in receiving and understanding, and not looking at it from a place of hatred, anger. I didn't go into depth with these young ladies when I was talking to them. My main thing to you, now I have more time, of course, but when I was talking to them, my main thing was you have to forgive your dad so you can move forward. It's always the saying, like when you're angry or you hold a grudge against somebody, it's like you're drinking poison trying to kill them. It's not going to affect you. Holding a grudge or being angry towards somebody doesn't affect them. And God has really been hard on me about that, in this space in my life of not holding grudges and not being angry. So he'll let me have my moment. I'll be angry. That recently happened because in family we get upset. Like I got upset with my cousin. I know she gets upset with me. So I'll be upset with her and I'll be thinking about stuff and I'll be like, yo, I can say this, I can say that. And I know she might do the same thing. I can say this, I can say that. But then God is like, all right, you had your moment. Now look at it from her perspective. So then I'll step back and I'll look at it from her perspective and I'll be like, okay, I can see why she's upset because she feels like it's unfair. She's taking on too much. Like this is too much for her. Why does she have to do that? It's not her responsibility. So I understand why she's upset. And then when I get into that space, I heard Sinbad say that on the Breakfast Club one time. He said, the thing about Trump supporters is you can hate them, but you have understand when you're at a. He didn't say this. I'm paraphrasing this part, but when you get to a point of growth, you have to then understand the other side. Now you don't like them, and you made your points on that. Now understand why they are like they are. So once you sit back and be like, well, why do they support? Then you're like, oh, okay, I get it now. You know, I'm not saying I agree with it, but it takes the anger out of the situation when you can see both sides. So that helped me. So then it's like, you know what? I'm not even mad at my cousin. I made a big deal towards it to her, or I'm holding on this grudge towards her, and God's not happy about that or getting glory. So I'm like, you know what? It's love, man. Forget that. I forgive you. I hope you forgive me. I love you. Let's move forward. And you have to get in those spaces in life and appreciating life. So my childhood consists of me holding on to things. So I'm holding on to this relationship with my dad. So I'm acting out. It's making my life harder for my mom. School's got to call her, got to getting put out of schools, moved around. I remember I was out one time with this young lady, and we were at I think it's called Napa Valley Fresh or something, whatever that salad place is called. We were there, and so we were talking, and we were like, she's like, yeah, I went to Cardinal Shan. I was like, I went to Cardinal Shan. I'm like, man, we the same age. It's crazy. We didn't know each other. I was like, she's like, why? Why didn't you stay? I was like, I got put out. And then she's like, oh my goodness. I was like, yeah, I was real bad. She's like, oh my goodness, Jamal McCrea. I'm like, yeah, that's my name. And she's like, she starts getting louder. We're in a place of business. People, she's like, Jamal McCrea, Jamal McCrea. I'm like, calm down, like, stop yelling. She's like, bro, I remember you. You used to be so bad. You got put out. I remember you now. And it's crazy. In that moment, I realized that reputation is more important than money. That's a proverb where it talks about reputation is more important than money. I'm like, that is true because your reputation follows you way more than what your money does. So I was like, yeah, that was me. And I tell people, like I talk to people at work, I don't miss those conversations, but you know, those like, how were you growing up? I was like, I was terrible. I was a bad kid. They like, oh my God, I can't believe it. I was really bad. I was angry. I was hurt. And me and my cousin were talking about that when we talking about the Gucci Man versus Jeezy. Like when it's tension, it's because somebody got hurt in a situation, not physically, meaning like if you're upset, I'm upset with you because that hurt me, what you tried to do, that you would do that to me. And then I'm angry. And it's like you start to understand emotional behavior. And so, but then when we can come to peace and finally talk it out, it's like, all right, bet. Now that we talked about it, we good. Let's move forward. And I think that's what we're all trying to figure out in this stage of adulthood, kids, all of that, right? So now we move out of childhood, Jamal, anger. We understand the root of that anger. My father, as an adult, I forgive my father. So now that childhood trauma is healed. That part of my life is healed. I can love that Jamal and understand why he was like that. So now we go to the teenager Jamal. So the teenager Jamal, and it makes me think about the scripture, like when I became an adult, I put away childish things. I think sometimes that scripture is taken out of context because it makes people be like, oh, I don't act childish. And it's not just about that. It's the way to resolve certain things aren't childish. Because I saw this one time, I ain't gonna lie, I watched some of the VH1 shows. I was watching the Marriage Boot Camp. I watched them. And so I saw a clip where a guy he's like, oh, this is stupid. I don't want to do this. And I'm like, oh, that's a defense mechanism. He used as a child. We use as a child when things are too tough or it's too vulnerable a space. This is stupid. I don't want to do this. That's how you defend yourself because I feel like I'm being attacked. So we have to go back and revisit that childhood trauma and realize, oh, I used to get angry. I used to get mad. That's not, anger and mad is an emotion that's okay to feel, but that's not good to resolve issues. All right. So then we get into teenage years. Teenage years struggle with acceptance. All right. Struggle with acceptance. So I go to high school. This is so funny to me because, okay. But then let's touch on this point. So I didn't get into the high school I wanted to go to. So I originally wanted to go to Poly. And I remember, I was going to say rest in peace. I lost a childhood friend last year. We both went to go take the city test because you got to take a test to get accepted into the school that you want to go to. And so in doing that, he wanted to go to city. I wanted to go to Poly. I take the test. And I'm like, yo, I'm going to Poly, son. Like, marketing words. I was this really cocky kid. Even thinking about it, I was like, oh, God. So I'm like, yo, I'm going to Poly, son. This is how cocky I was. I didn't put down any other school. You're supposed to put down 2 schools. I only put down 1. Like, it's no need. I'm going to Poly. I was like a little prime time. Like, it's no need. I know where I'm going. So in that, I only put down 1. So he's like, bro, I think you should put down 2. I'm going to put down city and Poly. Arrogance, like, nah, son, I'm good. You do that. I'm good. So don't get accepted. Crushed. I've been telling people this whole, like, where you going where you going for 9th grade? Where you going for high school? Poly. Don't even got acceptance. Poly. Like, just cocky. So I get it back. They like, nah, you ain't accepted. So I'm devastated because I'm like this little middle schooler. You can't tell me nothing. So I'm like, I'm hurt. And I tell this story because kids and teenagers, even as adults, things don't work out and it's okay. You got to keep going. And things don't work out sometimes for better things. So I go to high school. And in that moment that I get to high school, I'll reconnect with my cousin, the same male cousin I'm talking about. We hadn't seen each other during this time frame because my pops came around a little bit early on. Then he kind of disappeared or did his thing, whatever that may be, right? So me and my cousin lost our relationship because of that. So we get to high school. Now I'm going to school called Newtown. It just opened. My aunt calls my mom, says it's a new school opening up by us. Why don't you bring him here? So she's like, okay. She's like, what you thinking about that? I'm like, I'm cool. I just been out here living because we had to move out the city because my mom didn't feel like, I don't want you to lose you to the city. So we go out to a whole nother demographic. I say it like that. And I was like, as long as we can get back to a demographic where people look like me, I'm cool. We was living in Bel Air, Maryland. Man, so we come back, and when we come back, we go to Newtown. This is new for me. So this goes into, you go to like popularity because you feel like if I'm popular, I made it. You know what I mean? And I just think of that teenage Jamal wanting popularity and acceptance. And to the point, you'll let people joke you, let people make fun of you, because you'd be like, oh, this person is cool. I want to be cool with them. And it's like, no, you don't need acceptance from other people. And it's so weird because we all have younger siblings or nieces and nephews, and we see them going through that. And you just want to tell them, like, you don't need acceptance. But it's like, you went through that. You wanted acceptance. You wanted people to like you. You know what I mean? So you were doing whatever you were willing to do to get that. And so it's like, you don't need that. But it's like, it's hard to explain that to a 16-year-old, 15-year-old, because when you were 16 and 15, you needed acceptance. You needed to be liked. You needed to be popular. So we get to the school, and a weekend or a couple weeks in, might have been a month, I'm hanging with I'm hanging with this guy, and I'm like, all right, I'm like, yo, I'm about to head out, about to go. He's on the phone. He like, all right, Jamal, I'll talk to you later. And he like, my cousin is on the phone with him. This is how crazy God works. We haven't seen each other in years since we were little kids. I'm in high school now. Fast forward, so he's like, man, the dude is like, all right, Jamal, see you later. So my cousin like, Jamal, he's like, I got a cousin named Jamal. He's like, ask him if he know a dude named, if he got a cousin named Leonard. He's like, you got a cousin named Leonard? My cousin goes by two names because the first was middle name. So I'm like, nah, I don't. He's like, nah, he ain't gonna know me as that. You know me as Alex. So he said, ask me if you got a cousin named Alex. He's like, you got a cousin named Alex? So I'm like, yeah, I do. He's like, what's his last name? He's like, yo, what's your last name? He's like, McCrea. He's like, yo, that's my cousin. So he's like, yo, I'm talking to your cousin. Yo, I'm on the phone with your cousin. I'm like, oh, word. Let me get the phone. He's like, yo, I'm gonna be up there tomorrow. Let's link up. So we reconnected. And we've been tight ever since. And it's like, it's crazy because if I go to Poly, that doesn't happen. And it's like sometimes, and it's funny because when I was telling my homeboy, he's like, yo, I couldn't imagine, because in the college I wanted to go to Morehouse. He's like, I couldn't imagine you went to Poly at Morehouse. Yo, you probably been so arrogant. People probably couldn't even understand you, because sometimes we equate Harvard or Yale, we equate schools and things to making us feel prestigious and feel like we are somebody. And and we see that today, letters, fraternity, people equate stuff to make them feel valued. And so it's like, I'm so glad that I don't feel like that. And I'm not judging on anybody that does feel like that. I think we're all different. But we reconnected. So then we've been tight ever since. Same thing. Fast forward to college. I want to go to Morehouse. So now I went on a college tour, and I only want to go to Morehouse because Spelman was next door and it was downtown Atlanta. I'm like, oh, this is where I need to be. I don't even know if I would have ever graduated if I would have went to Morehouse, but it's like, man, okay, so I want to go here. But my youth pastor at the time was like, man, you should really go to North Carolina Central. I go to North Carolina Central. I'm like, yeah, this is cool, but we just saw Spelman, and we just seen that we could walk to downtown Atlanta. So this is cool. I get it, but I'm gonna go down here. You know what I mean? And it was two other colleges that I really liked on that tour, which was Tennessee State and Tuskegee was another college as well. So we used to do these college tours. So we I fell off of Morehouse. My youth pastor, his wife was like, hey, if you come over, we'll help you with the Central one. So I came over there. I did the Central one just to do it. I'm not even thinking about it. I'm going to Morehouse. So I'm waiting for this Morehouse letter. And I'm like, yo, where's the Morehouse letter? I get accepted in Central. I don't even care. I'm like, all right, cool. They're like, you get accepted? Yeah, thank you. Yo, when the Morehouse one come, let me know. Right, like, I'm telling my mom. So I'm thinking it's weird now. So then my best friend, he ended up getting accepted. So we high school best friends, all that. He get accepted to Central. So I'm like, all right, bet. Well, if I do go to Central, that'd be cool. So I'm like waiting on this Morehouse letter. So then finally, I'm just sitting there one day, and my mom told me this is so wild. This is she like, man, your Morehouse letter came. I'm like, when did it come? She's like, it came like a month ago. So I'm like, okay, where is it? She's like, it's in my drawer. I knew in that moment what that meant. So I run upstairs to go see it. I hold it up to the light, and it had that. Thank you for applying. We regret to inform you. I'm crushed again. This is deja vu. This happens again. So I'm sleeping on Central. I didn't want to go. So I'm like, bump it. Let's just, you know how it is now when you don't get, let's just go. Let's go ahead. Let's go to Central. So I go to Central, go down there. The dude that I'm real tight with, we real like brothers. We had this space where it was, I heard Keenan and Kel say this. It was actually Keenan. And he was like, sometimes you can be associated with a person for so long, you kind of want to start to, I want to be known as me, you be known as you. We were kind of in that space. Like, it's love, but we want to be known as like individuals. So that's how I would tell it. He may tell it differently. So we get down there, and he's kind of doing his own thing. I'm kind of chilling. I meet a guy in the computer lab. I got on this. They gave us these little shirts that said North Carolina Central, Maryland Eagles, because we was from Maryland. So yo, see, he like, oh, yo, that shirt fresh. I'm like, appreciate you, bro. We dap up, start talking. Me and him been friends ever since. So that again goes to, we get so caught up in prestige or things that you miss out on relationships with people that you come across based off of where you didn't really want to be in this place, but I went here, and all the relationships and friendships that I made because of it. And I know it's always gonna be that one person, well, you would have made relationships wherever you would have went. It's not about that. It's about the people that you met that become very special people to you, you know? So then, okay, I like teenage Jamal struggled with acceptance. Childhood Jamal was struggling with anger. So now we got acceptance, anger. So we realized after teenager Jamal, you don't have to be accepted. You don't have to have people like you. You don't have to be accepted. I forgive that Jamal for that. So this is about forgiveness, which to me this year has all been about, my words have been accountability and also forgiveness, forgiving others, and hopefully people that are have forgiven or will forgive me. So we get to college. College Jamal, it sounds so weird. I don't want to use that word. But this is like, so you got to understand, in high school, and my friends will tell you this, my mom didn't let me go to a lot of places, do a lot of things. So when I got to college, I'm like, yo, I'm turning up. Yeah, I'm wilding out. Thank you. I'm wilding out, Jamal. So, yes, it's the HCCU experience, man. That's what that means. Like, it means a lot of things, because I don't want it to be.
Funny story. My parents was like, I came home and I had showed them my tattoo. They said, "Oh, I knew you was gonna get one."
Yeah.
They're like, "You about to have time in life, but just don't come back pregnant or some shit."
Right, yeah. That's, oh my goodness, that was the story. Man, my mentor, he told me the same thing. He's like, bro, only thing I was worried about when you was in college was you calling me like, yo, I got a little Jamal on the way. He was like, as long as you don't call and say that, we good. So we right, we're locked up. So we going, even on the ride down to college, he like, man, it's about to be the best time of your life. You don't even know. You don't know. You don't even know. And it's, yeah. And it's so crazy. So that Jamal that's where I kind of, you learn things that you don't really need in life, and things that you don't really need in life. Because I feel like, truthfully, and I always get knocked for this, because I used to have a homegirl that always used to say, like, stop making it seem like college is a bad thing. I don't think college is a bad thing. I think that college is just programs us to get ready for the real world, and it's kind of like we have to play this game. And this is kind of how I feel about college. It's kind of like, I feel bad saying this, but it's like college programs you to play the game of, I can fall in line, I can do this, I can get a degree by following the classes, answering the questions, which is weird, because then when you get into the work world, it's like, yeah, all the stuff you learn in college, forget that. You just need that degree to get here. And for now, you got to be able to step in, get it done, figure it out, right? And it's like, dang, I always say, like, if I could have went back, which is tough, because my cousin would be like, why don't you just do it now? I would have went and did like home improvement. Like, I would have taught myself how to be a carpenter, how to do plumbing, be a master electrician, how to, fix houses. I think that's what I would have built the business from that, because I'm starting to see, like, I like working with my hands. It's therapeutic for me. And it's crazy, because I saw that with Dr. Umar was talking about that, like, when trades were taken out of trade school. And I'm not saying I'm a Dr. Umar, Kevin Samuel. I try to hear people's perspectives, and sometimes I hear people like, oh, that's a good point. Like, trades being taken out of schools to help you see like, oh, maybe I'm better with my hands because I'm not good with just sitting in a class writing down and retaining information. But if you give me something to put together and take apart, oh, I can do this. You know what I mean? And I think sometimes that we need to give our kids more choices other than in sports or sit in the classroom. You know, to say like, hey, there's other things out here you can do. You can start a business. You can be an entrepreneur. You can remodel homes. You know, so you can build homes. So I just think it's a lot, and even more options than that. But it's those opportunities. I remember one time I was bike riding. It's so much with access and opportunities. So I remember I was bike riding one time on this trail, and I seen a whole group of kids, certain demographic, bike riding, and I'm like, yo, we didn't even have that as like as a sport. You know what I mean? Like in certain schools that have bike riding, you could be bike like we bike ride, like we compete, and it's just like crazy. It's like really about access because that type of exposure. You know what I mean? When you like you figure like as a community, they try to put us in this box, but then you get outside of that box and it's like, yo, it's so much stuff we could be doing. And it's like you want to take it back and dump it in that box and say, like, let's bust this box open. There's so much more stuff out here we can do. But people are like, nah, we cool with the box. Like they won't put like, no, let's break the box open. And there's so much more out here. But I say like if I would have went to college, I would have wanted to do college differently. I would have wanted to be more focused and understand that this is a valuable experience with the information that we're being taught instead of college. I just wanted to turn up. I just wanted to have fun. It's women. You can drink. We can partake. I want to just enjoy that. But it's like, yo, it's also some valuable. Like when I talk to people that be like, yeah, I studied abroad. I be like, dang, I wish I would have studied abroad. Went to Venezuela, went to Brazil, went to South America, Argentina for a semester. Like it was a lot of opportunities in college that you like, man, I should have took my time in college and just explored. But it's always cool to look back. And I think well, you'll do that. You look back in high school and wish like, man, I didn't have fear. Like I feel like fear held me back in high school from wanting to be accepted or wanting to fit in. And I would have did more. I would have gave more. I would have been more myself. And I think you look at a lot of things that robbed you of experiences. Like, okay, at this point in my life going forward, I don't want to let fear stop me. You know what I mean? Or I don't want to live in this box. So this regulated by this structure and system that, and unless, you know what I mean? I know system and structure sometimes can be good, but sometimes you just gotta it's that thin line with that. And so you pick up a lot of bad things in college too. And I think people don't really talk about that. You know what I mean? Because you're trying things, you're hooking up, you're meeting people, you're picking up habits. Nobody tells you that you're picking up habits. And these habits you'll be stuck with. And you have to now revisit those habits and be like, okay, I'm trying to talk like this because kids watch this. You have to revisit these habits and be like, okay, I got to get rid of this habit. This is a bad habit to have. And so now I'm in that space now where I'm getting rid of habits. And it's like, these are habits I picked up in college. And so that can be different for a lot of people. And so I know what mine's being specifically, but it's like, I got to get rid of these habits. And so that's the space I'm working on. I have to go back and work on something. I'm 32 now. I have to go back and work on something I picked up at 18, you know, because at that moment it's fun. Everybody's doing it. It's cool. You don't do this. Oh, try this. You don't do this. Now at 32, it's like, I don't want to do that. And I don't want to be where I go to that as a source of release. So it's like, I need to work on that, you know? So I look at it like that. So you get to the end of college. College is cool, fun. You broke, still fun though. And so you get up out of college, you graduate, bam. Had this thought. I had this dream. I have a lot of conversations with God, spending time in my Bible, and just the closeness I've started to develop with God through reading my Bible, through praying, through watching sermons. Our conversations have have begotten to become more and more intimate. So you said in life, think about this. You have when you had your high school graduation, you had some people that were fortunate had a college. I mean, you're fortunate to have a high school graduation, but you have your high school graduation, you have your college graduation, and the next two things in your life after that people will celebrate you are your wedding and your funeral. And I was like, man, I never thought about that because in your retirement, you can say your retirement party, but some people may not retire. Some people may not get married. So everybody on that five may not get all of them, but the funeral is for all of us, and you may not get a funeral, you know. So the question we ask each other is, who would you invite to your wedding? We do these hypotheticals. It's kind of funny. So because it lets you know the people that are in your life, which is this does. So you're going through this list and you write out your list. And after you're done writing your list, it's like, okay, Now, these people on this list, am I inviting them because I feel obligated, because like they're gonna feel some type of way because they weren't invited and they're gonna see these pictures, or in that part, or are they feeling, or are they, or are they on this list because they are beneficial in my life? They help my life. I would want them to know my wife. I would want them to still be a part of this process because of what they brought to my life, and they hope they continue. Because if we do that, oh, this list is about to be real small. You know what I mean? But you have, that is the honesty of the people in my life and the relationships in my life. Now, don't get me wrong. There's some people I can think of that you want to invite because you know how much they want to see you win. Even if I don't keep in contact, I know you want to see me win. But then I struggle with that because we haven't really talked, and that relationship is kind of, when it's where you've gone yours, but I know you're happy for me on Facebook. See, I'm happy for you when I see you do something on Facebook. So I get it. It's things like that as well. But when we really get into the depth of it, or really start to get under another layer of that, you look and you say, wow, like this list would be very small. My wedding would be very intimate if I only invited the people that I feel like are beneficial in my life, that I would want to know my wife, that I would feel help my life. That's a small list, and that's okay. I think we get so caught up with numbers and followers and popularity still, that it's like, oh, we want to, like, no, I don't need all those people there. You know, I want people there that when I hug you is genuine. When I introduce you to my wife is genuine. When we celebrate, when I cheers, it's genuine. You know, I look at you and I smile, you know, not awkward or not, you know, they were just here. So I think that is a realness sometimes that we have to start looking at about our own lives, you know, and I think that's a struggle. So hypothetically, you went through that, right? Because that would be just your list. You're not even talking about who your wife will want to bring. So you have, with that, you look at your wedding and then your funeral, and it looks like the funeral is the impact that you have. And this is like really from God, because I wouldn't even have thought of this. The funeral is the impact you have going forward now for the rest of your life. Because before, you didn't understand impact and how you treat people. You know what I mean? You just kind of, that's the 20-year-old Jamal that we can already talk about. Because 20s to 30, 20 to 30, and a little bit maybe at the end of 30s, but kind of closed it not too long ago. But like that 20 to 30s Jamal is selfish, just about him, and manipulative and lying. And, you know, I explained it like this. I said, when you understand, it's like that moment when you understood the importance of your credit. Like, you didn't understand credit. You just ran up credit cards. You bought stuff. You didn't really work on your credit. And then it's like, oh, you want to buy a house. Oh, you want to get a car. And they're like, let's talk. We want to show you something here. Like, see, your credit score needs to be up here, and your credit score is right here. So we can't give you this car. We can't give you this house. You know what I mean? Because of that. And so you realize, like, oh, I got to go back and fix my credit. That is 20-year-old Jamal. 20-year-old Jamal is like, oh, I messed up a lot of relationships. Oh, I hurt friendships. Oh, I didn't handle things correctly. Oh, I manipulated a lot of things. Oh, I lied about a lot of things. So it's like, I need to go back and fix these things, you know, fix this, not to reconcile and be friends again, but to say, hey, I was wrong in that situation. Or, oh, hey, I didn't handle that situation correctly. I owe you an apology. And I realized that was 20-year-old Jamal. And even now, I still, again, behavior and habits, you have to get rid of. You have to get rid of manipulation, lying. Why are you lying? You know, why are you in a space where you still feel you need to lie? And it's like, my thing is now just trying to become as much honest as possible with, I think Jesus did a good thing with that. Being honest, but you're being, like, Jesus was honest to build you up. Like, my honesty should be to build you up, not to tear you down. Because people can use, like, oh, I'm being honest. But no, you're trying to tear that person down. If I'm being honest and I'm building you up, that's a different type of honesty, because it's accountability, but it's also to help you, not to hurt you. You know what I mean? I think we have to be very careful. And I think this stage of life is like being more honest, and being honest with I'm just trying to help, but understanding it's levels of honesty that you can be with people. Like, you got to realize certain friends, I was having this conversation with a coworker. She's like, you know, your friends you can talk a certain level with. And it's like, that's true, because everybody is not ready to be at a certain level of honesty, because they're going to A, feel like you're attacking them, or B, feeling like, who are you? So to say these, so you got to know. And I remember my mentor said this, like, you're in a space now where you're being, you kind of I don't know the right words on how he said this, but pretty much he was saying like now you're able to be honest and be real. Everybody's not going to be ready to be honest and be real, and you have to be okay with that and still love them for that. They're not ready to be open and sharing and talking about what's going on with them or accountable about their actions, and that's okay. Like because you're still working on yourself as well. Like, you know what I mean? So like they say, if you cast a stone if you're sinless, and nobody's sinless, so we can't cast stones. So I'm not throwing stones at you or throwing rocks at your house, you know. So it's just a thing where you recognize, like, man, I'm starting to be in a space where I want to be honest, I want to be transparent, I want to be real and vulnerable. But it's like you should only have people around that's okay with being that with, you know what I mean? And I think it's always going to be Judas around anytime. You'll have Judas, whether it's in ministry, whether you're working, in any aspect of life. It's always going to be somebody that may not have your best interest around, but they still are around. And you just have to pray for discernment in that. But for the most part, it's trying to put people around you that are beneficial, that are helpful, that do want to help you win. And it's a lot of part that you're going to have to do by yourself. And I'm realizing that. And this is that 30 to 40s Jamal. Kind of just embracing that journey by itself. So going back to the 20s one, once you finish up college, it's like you're real selfish because you get your job, you start making your money, you start dating, but you're very manipulative in how you're moving about things because you become this character because now you've bought into what they've told you is success and how you should look and how you should be, and you buy into that and you approach things like that, but you're not being who you really are. And it's like now you're a character, you're like you're playing a person, you know. And so you recognize that, and that doesn't make your actions excusable. It's still, you still have to take full responsibility for your actions and decisions. But now you understand, oh, why that Jamal was doing that. He thought because he was this character, he was acting or being a wolf in sheep's clothing, that because you are coming off like Mr. Nice Guy, but then trying to sleep with this woman, like, oh, it's nothing wrong with that. It is. I think you have to be honest in intention. You have to be honest in where you are in your life and what you're about. That's how I see things now. I saw Jay-Z say this, and it was written, so I don't know if he really said it, but I think it was from an article. And he was saying, like, now when you look back on, he said, when I look back on my Big Pimpin' lyrics, he's like, I kind of cringe because it's like, oh man, I said that. And it's like you get to that point in your life where you look back at stages of you and you're like, oh, that was me, and I have to accept that. That was me that was manipulating. That was me that was lying. That was me that was dishonest. That was me that was playing on feelings. I had this lady tell me, she's like, you're very intuitive. And that can be very dangerous because you can pick up on people's emotions and feelings and understanding how to manipulate that. And that's true. And so you can manipulate that for your good, or you can manipulate it to get what you want out of it, or manipulate it for how God, or you can stop manipulating and be honest and open this space up, which that is purposely given to you for, to recognize, hey, this is what's going on in this room, and let's open up and let's be honest here, and let's use that for God's purpose. And I think that's the space that I'm trying to now recognize that I'm in and move forward. So that was my 20s. So now when you hit 30s, you're like, man, I need to go back and do a lot of apologizing, a lot of I'm sorry's, and a lot of all that. And then you like, I'm done with the character. Like the character is dead. Death to the character. Like I'm going to start being who I really am. And it's so funny because in that, my mom, you got to love your parents. Because like my mom was like, does that mean you're not going to wear suits anymore? And it's like, well, yeah, Mom, not unless I have to. I'm not doing that anymore. So it's like, why are you so rebellious now? It's like I don't feel like I'm rebellious. And then my cousin's like, hey, you're rebellious, bro. Like nobody can really tell you any. But it's like now you're like becoming who you are, and that's like self-discovery, and that's tough because that affects friendships. Because you start when this pandemic hit, it made you realize like life is not guaranteed. Nothing is guaranteed. You only get one chance at this. You know, you need to stop playing and really start discovering who you are, why you're here, what is God's intended purpose for your life. That's a solo journey, you know. So I started traveling by myself, which was like very therapeutic for me because it forced growth for myself. Because if I travel with my cousin, she's the type, she'll remember everything and bring everything. And hey, you forgot this, I got you. Hey, you forgot this, I got you. Got the towel, got the Tylenol. But when you travel by yourself, it's an intimacy and trusting God and like, okay, you messed up. You got to learn from that. And you can't forget that next time. And it's that quiet time with God where you see God take you somewhere very far from home and then bring you back. Like my prayer is always when I go somewhere by myself, like God, I pray you bring me back. And if he greens light and said I will, and then like let's go. And then I come back. And in that time away, I really have time to like just think about some things and with different scenery, and it really forces me to really get deep. Like I remember going to Vegas and just being in Vegas and like, man, I could not have been here. 20-year-old Jamal couldn't have been here. Even 30 Jamal is a little tempting. I was reading around like how does work in Vegas, and it's like that's kind of cool. Some people like having money when they travel. I'd be kind of glad I have enough money just to get where I'm supposed to be and get back. Because sometimes surplus money is not always a good thing. So going to Vegas, that taught me that. I went to Seattle. Seattle felt like a place where if I was supposed to live on the West Coast, I would live here. I just like the trees. I like the trees in Portland. That demographic, like of that northwestern type vibe. Like this kind of feels like me. Being in Arizona, being in the desert, I'm like, I don't really like this. You start to feel out things about, and it's kind of teaching you about what you like, what you don't like for yourself. Because a lot of times when you travel with people, like somebody's compromising, like, oh, let's go do this, and like, all right, cool, I don't really want to, but let's do it. When you're by yourself, it's like, what do you like to do? What do you want to do? And it's like, this is what I really want to do. Let's go do it. I just want to relax. Let's just do that. And it's like you're learning yourself and understanding yourself better. And that helps you. So whenever you do get married or whenever you do have a life partner, you can be like, I know me. I know myself. I wasn't just doing things as a group. I did some things. I started doing things on my own and I learned myself. And I think God really revealed some things. The thing I tell people with this stage, now we talked about 20s Jamal, and I have to forgive him. And it's crazy because I can see each one of these Jamals, and it's like I forgive him, and I hope others forgive him as well. Because I feel like now this Jamal is trying to go around and apologize for that one. I mean, still some stuff I'm working on, like the sliding in the DMs and all that. I'm trying to cut all that out, but we getting there. And like even for me, a new journey with this 30-year-old Jamal I've been trying to walk in celibacy, which is funny because, bro, when I used to talk to people, usually women, but when you talk to the women that are practicing celibacy in church, they always the ones that's like talking down to you, like casting stones, like judging you, like, yeah, I've been celibate for this long because I'm getting married, I'm holding out. But the deepest thing about it is when I started practicing celibacy, which ain't been too long, don't pat me on the back, but when I just started practicing it, I had a couple conversations, and each conversation that's been with a woman has been very helpful because they kind of have given advice, and even from guys, like just the advice I've been getting, which was surprising. That's why I know it's God, because people have been like very supportive and advice giving. So I remember the guy I was talking to, he was married. He's like, bro, I'm trying to tell you that that's it right there. Like, I'm telling you, God gonna bless that. Like, stick with it. I was like, thanks, man. I appreciate that. Like, because God really called me out on that. He's like, you so quick every time when you was living your old lifestyle, you would call him out. Yo, last night was crazy. It's like, why are you now sitting on secrecy that you're in celibacy? So I'm like, yeah, you know what? I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna be honest. Like, if I want to be honest, I'm gonna be honest. And so I was like, yeah. So I've been starting to practice this, and somebody was like, I think that's dope. Like, why are you doing it though? And at first because people say marriage, you think that's what you're supposed to say, but I'm like, nah, because I feel like that's making marriage a God. Like, that's kind of like what Jesus was saying with the Sabbath. Like, I'm God. Like, this other stuff isn't God. Like, you got to be careful. Like, people that be like, I'm married, getting celibacy for married. Like, I feel like sometimes you're making that a God. And I was like, I'm being celibate because of my relationship with God. Like, I feel like I want to become even more intimate with him. And that was kind of blurring things up. And somebody was like, I can rock with that, because we always have been taught like to do things out of fear of sin. So like, oh, you got to stop, but for you to do that, to get closer to God, like that's dope. And it's kind of cool because you sharing that, you don't realize how it's helping people or affecting people. And I was like, yeah, I never even thought about it. You know what I mean? I just felt like I didn't want to lie. I wanted to be honest with people, but now I got to stick with it. Because once you put it out there, people know. So I was like, now you got to really stick with it. And it's the one thing I say, I don't know how long I do it. I feel like it's one thing where you get up every day, just like your regular life, and you try it one day at a time, and try, and each day keep trying to work at it, but know the focus isn't to receive something, because I feel like if you're doing it for marriage, it's like an exchange. Like, I'm doing this to give me that. No, I'm doing this because of the intimacy that I have with my father, or the relationship I have with God, and the closeness now that it's allowing us to have. I remember I started bike riding in the pandemic, and you can bike ride because it looked like I'm legend in the streets, so it was real easy to bike ride. So when I would go bike riding, God would be talking to me, and I was riding through this park one time, and you saw like the families. I don't even know if they're supposed to be having cookouts, but you saw these families having cookouts, a lot of beautiful black families, and he was like, "Why don't you just get a life partner and just spend the rest of your life with that person?" He's like, "But this is the thing, you want to get somebody that's gonna help your relationship with me, not hurt it." And I was like, man, that's so deep. Because now me and you have become intimate. So I want somebody that's already intimate with you, and I'm already intimate with you, and we come together, and that continues to help your relationship with God. I help my relationship with God. So that changes even how you look at marriage. And I'm like, wow, I never look, because we looked at marriage as like a checklist. I always say like, it's a lot of knock on guys because like, oh, there's so many good women out here. I get that. But I think sometimes we get it lost in, do you really, what is your purpose of being with me? And I'm sugarcoating that because it's like sometimes you can meet a woman and she be like, oh, I'm just want to get married. Like, okay, that's cool. You want to get married. But it's like, do you want to get married because you like me, or do you want to get married just to get married? Because then that's a different conversation. Now I'm just a checklist. Like, it don't matter because we knock guys to that all the time. Like I didn't even know about this, but it's like, oh, women sometimes are upset because I feel like you just with me because I'm pretty. Like, you don't care about what I think or what I know. And I'm like, man, I never thought about that until it's brought to my attention. And then it's like, but on the flip side, guys can complain like, you just want to get through your checklist, and I'm just a part of your checklist, and I'm just here, So it's like, until we can start breaking down some of these walls in the man and women relationship and really talk about these things, I think that will allow us to get into that space of love. Because now once we can be open and honest, we had that moment. It's like, okay, I'm glad I see where you're coming from. You see my perspective. I see your perspective. It's not about being right. I think I'm out of that stage of being right. It's just about, I hear you. I hope you hear me. And from there, we move forward. And I think that's where I am now. And I think that's why I call it the interlude, because I'm in this place of healing, forgiving my past, recognizing where I came. Now I'm in this journey of independence, like me and God's relationship, and me and him walking together and talking together and reading and studying. I don't have to be in a church. I get calls about that. Like, you coming back to church? Like, no, I'm okay. Some people need a trainer when they go to a gym. Some people can go to a gym and just work out by themselves. And I'm just in that space of right now it's me and him, and I'm trying to listen to what he's saying. And things he's asking me to get rid of, people he's asking me to check on, I'm getting more intimate into that relationship. And a scripture that came to mind was consider the cost. Because when you start to get intimate like with God like that, you have to consider the cost. The analogy he used is, you don't just start building a house unless you're sure that you have the money to build the house. So when you start getting more intimate with God, you have to consider the effects that it has on other relationships. And it's tough because it's people you care and you love, and it affects it. You know what I mean? So it's just things to think about, but it's worth it. And I think that's the space I'm in. And so from there, we'll see where it goes. But I think that's me being transparent, and even just the first level. I think it's more levels that we continue to unpack. But yeah, I think that's pretty good for right now, I think.